Is your sex life stagnant? Do you have no respect from women? Welcome to the Dominance Academy, your gateway to revitalizing your masculine identity. Rooted in timeless values and traditional roles, the Dominance Academy offers practical solutions, expert guidance, and unwavering support to help you unravel the challenges of intimacy and forge a deeper connection with yourself. You will invigorate your masculine leadership and confidence, which will have a profound effect on your romantic life. Your professor, Mr. Justin, is a leader in the realms of sexual education, relationship dynamics, and the arcane arts of BDSM. His curriculum teaches the mysteries behind polarity and structured power dynamics, weaving them into the fabric of flourishing relationships. The results when dealing with women is you will have intense influence over how they behave around you, fucking their minds, hearts, and bodies into joyous submission. Join me at the Dominance Academy and restore your identity while discovering the joy of a fulfilling masculine presence. It's time to step into your role as a leader and reclaim your life.
Good evening, good evening. Welcome back. Hope you're having a fine weekend. It's been a little wet here in New York, and not the good kind of wet. The bad kind of wet. You know, the kind that you can't go riding your motorcycle in. But whatever. It is what it is. You have to learn the fine art of acceptance, because life has its own plan. And if you resist what life has to throw at you, you're just going to have more stress. You know, that's what anxiety is. Well, most of anxiety is. And that is resistance to what is. Probably didn't know that. Things will be a certain way, whether it's your health, your finances, your job, your woman, the weather of the day, you name it. And you don't want it to be that way. You'd rather it be something else. And that conflict between what you want and what is will produce strain. It'll produce tension inside you. And this is no good. All right. So in order to let go of tension, in order to alleviate yourself from that, you just accept what is. Say, well, I'm not as fit as I would like to be, but this is what it is. And you don't get emotional about it. You just decide to change. That's it. And then the things that are out of your control, like the weather, for example, then you just let it go. And you once you start learning to exercise that muscle of letting it go, then things get a lot easier internally. But it takes practice. It certainly takes practice to exercise that muscle of letting things go. But don't confuse that with being a pushover, right? You still have to have your own rules and your principles and boundaries. And but it has more to do with how you react to things internally. And we don't want to react to things too much internally, because that's what sets us off, removes us from our foundation, gets us looking in the wrong directions. And those directions often don't produce a lot of good results. There's not a lot of fruit in that when our attention is drawn away from ourselves. Right? I hope you're liking my new wallpaper here. I've held on to that photo for a while. I really like it. And so I decided to turn this into a wallpaper. Yep. Gagging twins. What's up, Hotep? All right. High profile. Yeah, so you gotta really watch your internal state, and it just takes practice, you know. It really does. The real, like the regular thing that you go through life, you know, you get conditioned with just being who you are, how you've always been, and you know, and you just get used to it. You're just like, oh, this is just who I am, and you don't realize that you don't have any self-awareness. But once that self-awareness starts to grow, and you get past that knee-jerk response of either defending yourself from the realization or feeling bad about the realization, you get past those two stupid speed bumps, then you can start just growing your awareness, and you can start observing how you respond to things, and you'll start seeing like how foolish so many of your responses are. And this is where your growth happens, when you start seeing yourself clearly without any sort of lens that says I'm this way or I'm that way, either good or bad. You know, you don't want to have any kind of Dunning-Kruger going on where you think you're greater and more special than you actually are. And you don't want to be thinking lesser of yourself either. You just want to see yourself as you are. And that's it. No judgment, no pushing up, no dropping, no pulling down. Just what it is. And this is the beginning of your grounding. Right? Because you can't be grounded if you're pushed down, right? And you can't be grounded if you're trying to push things up. It has to be level. So that's really the beginnings of it. You know, self-awareness and dropping away judgment. What's up, James? You know, James, you said that you would oh no, never mind. Different James. So yeah. All right. So I've got some things here about 10 things that guys got to know if that you need to hear, you know, about dominance. And it's a lot of stuff that I weave into my other shows, and but this is kind of like simplifying it, kind of distilling it, and putting it together into one concise message here. Okay. Because I know the younger you guys are, the shorter your damn attention spans are. You got to read books. I just grabbed up a new book on dark psychology. And it's funny because it's labeled as dark psychology. I flipped through it. I didn't really get into it just yet because it arrived today. But it's really just simple psychology stuff, right? Like classical conditioning, operant conditioning, all the stuff that I talk about. And so that just tells you that there really is no dark psychology, right? There's no real dark manipulation methods. What makes it dark is the person who's using it. It's like magic, right? Magic is just magic, you know, if it were real. And like the manipulation, it changes based on who's coming to it. And that makes all the difference in the world. Just like the woman changes depending on who's coming to it. She'll behave totally differently based on, you know, who is wielding her. And if you're wielding her poorly, you're going to get terrible behavior. she's gonna, you know, be misbehaving, you know, call you names, you know, maybe even throw a frying pan at your head, I don't know. Yes. All right. Been struggling with this whole women thing. What whole women thing? Squirrels? See, this is my little squirrel. What's up, squirrel? Yeah, they're just squirrels, dude. Nothing to worry about. Just don't feel good about myself in the presence of women. Well, that is because you're using them as your measuring stick. That's why. That's what that's all about. It's pretty common for guys. Like, they want to measure, they want to be liked, they want to be seen, they want to be recognized, and it makes them feel good, makes them feel stronger, right? And this is it's because and because there's a lack inside just of one's own, right? Just of one's own accord. And so it's basically going to the woman, or the archetype of woman, basically saying, am I okay? Please, like, let me know. Tell me, am I okay? Am I acceptable? And really, if you start digging into it, it basically distills down to a mother wound. Like, I'd say like 98% of the time, that's what it is. It's a mother wound. But yeah, and you have to investigate. You have to reveal and let go, right? Because there's parts of you that grip onto it, because parts of the identity has been formed due to that wound. It identifies through that wound. That's where you get victimization. And you spend large portions of life going through life as a victim, and putting yourself in situations, or putting yourself in situations where you can strengthen that identity. And it's all moved by the subconscious, because that portion wants to stay exactly where it is. So it looks for things to affirm that belief. Okay. And it's tough to rewrite those beliefs. All right. But what I was saying is that in other shows, that the thing with with your brain is that you can absolutely rewire the neural pathways. It just takes effort and consistency. That's all. All right. But it's simple in description, but you just have to know what to do, and then do it all the time, and just be like on your own ass, because the mind wants to snap back into those victim paradigms, and because it's a strong identity that's been built up for quite a while. So you have to be really on top of it for a little while, until it becomes habitual, and then that identity starts to crack, and it starts to crumble, and it starts to shift away. And then once that's kind of turned to dust, then you kind of like, well, fuck, who am I? And then that turns into the process of redefining yourself. And that can be challenging as well, because you've got all these influences all around you saying like what you should be, based on who's telling you. And so you kind of have to block out the noise and say, well, what do I believe in? Not what I learned in church, not what I learned in school, not what I would learn from my parents or whoever raised me, but what are my codes? What is most important to me? What is something I would die on a hill for? What do I expect from my highest self in terms of its behavior? Like that, those are your principles. Those are your codes. Okay. And so it takes time to sort that out. But it's like, well, do you want to put forth the effort and end up with using some time and some energy, and basically having formed your own little tract of land, right? With a fence around it, and saying, hey, this is mine. I made it. Might not be the biggest, baddest, but it's mine. It's clear and it's defined. Versus like really just going through life feeling like shit, basically, like a confused piece of shit. I'd take the time and the effort. But guys these days, they just want to flip a switch and make it happen. Yep. Yes. No, it's not effortless. It's every day of effort. But you know what they say, when you love your job, and when your job is being a man, the effort doesn't feel like so much effort. So, 10 brutal truths. Yes. Let's see if this time a certain little squirrel can try not to be distracting. All right. 10 brutal truths for guys to hear about with regard to dominance. So the first one here is that as interesting and alluring as controlling and influencing someone else is, you really have no shot, and I mean zero shot, if you have no command over yourself. If you have no command over your habits, your impulses, your emotions, your attention span, it's like if all of that isn't developed in some way, why would you expect a woman to trust your direction? It's like if you see like a couple of dogs, right, walking through the park, and like, have you guys ever seen like a really, really well-trained dog where it just like the guy just does like a finger gesture or something like that, and like boom, it's like sitting upright, ready and waiting, like a little soldier, and it says like a little command and whatever, and it like catches the frisbee fucking 12 feet in the air, right? Comes back, just understands commands, and it's like clean with it. Like, I've seen dogs like this, and I'm like, holy shit, that's fucking cool, right? And then you see the dog who's just completely filled with impulse, where if you were to leave the food out, like the dog bag of food, it would just destroy the entire bag. Like, it would rip it open, right? That other dog, you could put like a piece of sausage link on its nose and balance it there, and it's just going to sit there until you give the commands to eat. Or that other dog who, any distraction, little squirrel, a bird, a bug, it's like just gone. It's gone after it. Like, which one are you drawn to? Which one would you trust? I trust the dog who's got his shit together. Not the dog who's apparently led by just every impulse. It wants to like hump everything, hump every cushion in the home. It's like, get a grip, get a hold of yourself, right? That's the thing that separates, humans from animals. I mean, sure, we've got like certain thinking skills, and we can actually like think about thinking, but I think that one of the most impactful things that we have that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom is that we have the ability to control our natural impulses. We can literally say, no, I don't want to procreate. We can say, I don't want to eat. We can say, I don't want to have a shelter. Like all these natural things for survival, we can say, I don't want that. Or I'm going to stave that off for a little while. There was a time in my life when I decided to be purposely homeless. I said, you know what? Fuck all this shit. I put everything I could fit into, necessary stuff into a military duffel bag. And I closed my bank accounts. I had no phone. I got rid of it. Any cards or anything like that were closed. And I operated only in cash. And I purposely was homeless for a while. I can't remember how long, maybe a couple of months. But, just, I don't know, some kind of cleansing phase that I was going through. It was in my 20s, but you could do shit like that when you're in your 20s. But it was, we can go against our nature that says must protect ourselves, must procreate, must survive. And animals don't really operate in that way. They're constantly driven by those base impulses. Think about like a bird. They wake up and they basically spend their entire day looking for food. And that's pretty much every animal. Unless they're like one of the bigger, more lumbering animals. Maybe they sleep a lot. Bears, I imagine, sleep a lot. They wake up, but when they're awake, they look for food. So that's what separates us. And the ones who can really separate it out, that's men. Men have that capacity to take it a little bit further and make things a little bit more refined. It takes focus. It takes some hard work to have, any kind of discipline in your life. But that's just the only way. I'm sorry to say it. And you look at, people like myself, you look at other people online where they have these particular relationships that look very enticing. They look where the woman has a very high level of devotion to him. They doing whatever they feel like doing. It looks happy. It looks beautiful. Looks growth based. And you're like, I want to do that. Like, look at how like just relaxed and happy they are. Look how she just listens to his every word without question or pushing back or any of that bullshit. And you're like, I want that. But can you obey yourself? Like, can you obey when you say, I shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't be doing this every day, or what have you? Various things in your life, or various thinking patterns, emotion patterns. And you know that it's not the correct way. You know it's not the way of men, but you just kind of let it go. You let it persist. And that's not the way. That's not how things go for men. And how I talk about girls and the just the chaos that goes on in their heads for much of the time. How do you expect to be? Probably you don't even think about this because you're just like, oh, I want the woman in my life. I want to have regular sex. I want to have good times. I want to squeeze her titties. I want to do this. I want to do that. And you're only looking at this fun stuff. But if she really likes you, or if she loves you, if she respects you, she's going to be looking for some kind of guidance. And it's not like a rational, conscious thing like, gee, I hope he tells me what to do today. It's not like that. It's something more intrinsic. It's something coming from inside her that's calling for that energy from her man, that dominant masculine presence. And it's not with force. Okay. I talk about that too, right? Remember, force is not as good as power. Power is steadier. Force is very active. Okay. Power doesn't really try to prove anything. It's not very showy. Okay. And it can get a lot done, but more subtly. And so this is really where, you gotta be paying attention. You really gotta be paying attention to this shit. Uncle Guns, thank you for putting up the links. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. Yep. Yes, sir. So you got to control yourself. You got to control yourself, and basically if you could imagine like a proof of concept. You have to prove it to yourself that that it can be done by using you as the base number one test subject. Can you get your mind thinking the way you want it to think? Can you get your body to behave the way you want it to behave? Like, can you even sit up straight for extended periods of time? Or doing it just slouching? Can you do that? Can you sit with your back straight, your shoulders back and relaxed for extended periods of time? Can you sit without fidgeting something, tapping your foot, bouncing your knee, moving your hands? Can you just sit still? So simple. Can you do that for extended periods of time, just sitting still? And I don't mean by like doom scrolling, because that thing is taking control of your mind, right? You don't have to think about it. It like kind of pulls you and your body sits still as a side effect. But can you do it through choice? Can you just do these basic things? How can I tell a girl to sit up straight and stop slouching if I can't do it for more than 5 minutes? If my mind is erratic and I haven't attended to it, how am I going to be able to see hers, understand the architecture of it, and then help her reformulate it? If I'm an emotional wreck, or if I'm easily triggered into anger, depression, or happiness, if my emotions just in general are easily triggered to go this way or that, how can I guide someone else's? It doesn't make any sense. You have to become better equipped with yourself. Now, does that mean like you should just not engage with women the entire time, like while you're dealing with yourself? No. I mean, if you want to do that, sure you can, but I honestly think that you're going to learn more about yourself faster, because women can sometimes be like a microcosm of the universe. The universe will teach you about yourself if your ego doesn't get in the way. And if you let the lessons come in, those L's, they come right through, okay? But you learn. And somehow, with the presence of a woman, you can learn those lessons really fast. Probably because of proximity. She's right there. And it bounces back to you like a mirror. And if you're able to see it, if you allow yourself, if your ego doesn't get in the way, if your ego allows you to see it, then you'll learn your lessons and you'll grow faster. So it's not necessary, but I think that it's wise that while you are working on yourself, that you have women present in your life. Don't go thinking, okay, I'm going to just focus on myself, get myself all ready, and then I'll go talk to girls. Then I'll involve women in my life. You're never going to be in a state where you're saying, okay, I'm prepared, because you don't have the situations that are, coming up to tell you if you're prepared or not. So it's like if you're planning like a rucksack for a certain type of condition that you think is going to be the case when you take the rucksack out and go hiking. What if you get out there and the situation comes up that you did not prepare for? Because you can't plan for everything. You cannot prepare for everything. So you're gonna come across shit that you didn't even think of. And that's just the way it goes sometimes. And just the sometimes unpredictable nature of women, which is good, okay? It teaches you to be flexible in your learning. If you're not so stubborn, if you're not rock-headed about stuff and too firm about making things the way you want them to be, instead of patiently observing them as they are. All right. So number 2 here is so the first one is control yourself before you try to control her. Second one here is dominance isn't about getting your way. And I get why people think that that's what the case is. They think that's what it's about. Okay. You do end up getting your way, but it's more through a creative process. It's more like, how I talk about painting and stuff like that. Me painting the thing that I wanted to see, like if I wanted to paint a picture of a deer and I ended up painting a picture of a deer, that's me getting what I want because I chose to create that. So it's not getting my way in the sense that most people think of. But what dominance is about carrying responsibility. It's about carrying weight. So she will submit, she will surrender herself to you when she sees that you are able to carry weight that she can't. And this is where the first one comes into play of having that self-control. Because if she can see that you can shoulder the strains of emotions, situations, difficult decisions, or just daily life without really getting scratched or dented or cracked or anything, really, then it sends a signal to her. It's just like, I think this guy might be someone I could put my trust into. Because that means, or maybe that means, like through, she can extrapolate that maybe if he's like that with life, then maybe he can handle me. Like he's not going to crack because of me. He's not going to dent or scratch because of me. And so, because a lot of girls, they know, I think they know that they're fucking crazy. I think they know that they've got just a lot of stuff inside them, a lot of like swirling emotions and a lot of spinning thoughts. And I think when someone goes through many years just living like this, and I can imagine it might feel like a burden sometimes. And they might think that, well, I don't want to bring this burden to someone else. And so I think they don't want to, they don't want to be like imposing with that stuff. And I think this is why when guys get into relationships with girls, they don't really see very much of her. They only see a portion of her. They don't get to see the full extent of her being, because a lot of it is withheld because, she comes with her own doubts of like, oh shit, I don't know if I can do this. Maybe he won't like it. He won't like me. He'll judge this. Like, I think it's gross. So he probably thinks it's gross or whatever. And then on top of it, most dudes don't really show that they can carry much. Little thing happens and then she looks at their reaction and is like, oh, like, all I did was, tell him this thing that upset me. And he froze. He froze like a scared little bunny. Oh, okay. If he like freezes up because of that little thing, yeesh, I don't want to. I'll just keep most of my stuff under wraps. But truth be told, they will also tend to hide stuff if they really like you, and if they trust you and so on, because they're so afraid that if you see stuff that they judge and then judge it the same, that you'll just throw them away. That's a major fear for girls that really like you. And you have to encourage them that, and just over time, like let them know that it's safe to just pour out like whatever, like it doesn't matter. Like you're just this, enormous thing that everything is small to you. You know what they say? Like, don't sweat the small stuff. And then, by the way, it's all small stuff. That's really should be your mindset towards like pretty much everything. So dominance is not about getting your way. You do end up getting your way when you do it right. But like I said, it's more about what you've created. Not because you said, this is what I want, and then another person does it for you in that sense. And then it's also largely about carrying responsibility, having a strong, strong emotional spine, a strong mental spine. Really, really important. All right, the third one here is that you're leading her into what exactly? So if your vision is vague, she's not going to follow you so easily. So when you say like, be my submissive, it means nothing if you don't know where you're going and how to get there. Because it's one thing to have no vision. It's another thing to have a vision, but no plan. And it's a totally other thing having a vision plus a plan. You want to be in the state of having a vision plus a plan. And this is for the micro as well as the macro. So the day-to-day stuff, or your plans for that day, or the plans for your date, or the plans for your play session, or the plans for the next 6 months, the plans for the year. Okay. And this is a note to all of you guys out there that like to say, I don't really know what I want. I just want to go with the flow and see what happens. Oh, like, what if you were to like get into any kind of vehicle, a train, a bus, a boat, a plane, and you're like, okay, like what's the plan? Right? Or no. How about this? Like a tour guide, right? You go to some, distant country and you're like, okay, tour guide, show us around. What's the plan? What are we doing? And he's like, I don't know. I think we'll just kind of like go with the flow. And maybe in some respect that might be interesting, but I think I would like to have a plan. And I think if there were girls there, they would like to have a plan too, especially if it started to become just weird or boring or, just not adventurous or uninteresting or perhaps dangerous. I think a lot of people would be like, what the fuck is this? Right? Where you'd open up the guide, the booklet that comes with it, and it just says, we don't know. We wing it. I don't know. Maybe you could spin that into good marketing. But the fact of the matter is that it's not going to get you what you want. It's not going to get you the trust that you desire. And it's a nice feeling when people trust you. And like, that's a pretty good proof of concept when people put their trust in you. But it's a set of responsibility though. Because they're saying, hey, I believe in your judgment. I believe in your vision. And so you kind of you can acknowledge the good feeling, but you have to quickly move past that and check yourself. Check at what you're doing. So you want the thing, you want her on her knees, like in her heart. You want her on her knees physically. But you don't know what for. I had asked this of one of my clients, and he doesn't have much desire for children just yet. Maybe he never will. And I said, well, since that's been the primary reason to have a woman like interacting with you, whether it's a short term or long term, but like its main base drive is that human animalistic instinct, which we talked about before, which is just procreation. Like if there was no procreation, or if just something happened and humans mutated and we could just kind of like spawn from our own bodies, like without needing another being, then we would need women. Not in the same way at all. And so he doesn't have that. Like, he's not interested in having children, or at least just not yet. And so I had to ask him, I said, well, then what's the point of their presence? You really have to sit with that beyond pleasure. All right. So just assume you get all the sexual pleasure that you want. Okay. What else? Right? Because think about, like, how much does that take up of time? Right? You're bringing a woman into your life. And I don't mean once a week for an hour. That's not really in your life. Right? That's on the fringes of your life. But I'm saying in your life, say multiple times throughout the week for extended hours. Why is she there? And, and he was, he's thinking in these terms, because he does desire long-term companionship. And, he mentioned pleasure. I said, okay, like, forget about pleasure. Let's just assume you're going to get all of what you desire. And in that context, what else? Why is she even here? So if it's not sex, it's not procreation, then what? And so he had to sit with that. He had to sit and really mull that through his head to figure out what it is that he wanted. For me, it's about my creativity. I'm a very creative person. I've always been an artist with multiple disciplines throughout my life. And I see it just as another form of expression. Like, basically everything that I do is an extension of my creative expression. I like my motorcycle. I can't even just keep it as is. Like, I've customized the whole thing. Customized everything that I could, except basically like the gearbox. So I didn't feel like splitting the cases. That's kind of beyond my level of knowledge. But pretty much everything else has been changed, upgraded, either through performance or appearance. And I just can't let it be. Like, I was that kid in school who, when he got new shoes, he had to color them. Like, he had to change something on there, like take marker and change the color of the Nike swoosh or something like that. Because I just couldn't let it be. I needed to make it mine. I need to just customize it to my own vision, my own desires. So with a woman, I'm not sitting here looking at my submissive and going, well, I really want more kids. I don't. Okay, that's been done. And the sex stuff, like, okay, that's a given. So why is she here? Right? Because even if you have sex every single day, it doesn't take up hours, right? There's many hours in the day. And so, like, bulk of that is for like work and rest. And if she's there, only a tiny bit of that is dedicated to like sex and eating. So, like, what else is there? Right? And so for me, it's the creativity part. And I see my submissive, I see my woman as like a canvas where it's blank and I'm doing what I want, and it's not necessarily sexual, right? A lot of it is mental and emotional things that I can that I want, like things that I want to see, thinking patterns, feeling patterns, state changes. Like, I like to see this, and I enjoy the process of getting there, right? Because, the painting, you could have the vision perfectly, but it's going to take you hours or days or weeks, right? Those guys who did like those large, like fresco type paintings, back in the, probably like post-Renaissance or something like that, enormous paintings, they would spend years on them. Years. One painting, So so I enjoy the process. I enjoy the patience aspect of it. I enjoy watching the development, even when it's not going exactly the way I want it to. right? Because I'm just learning and observing. Oh, okay, like that's interesting. And I don't know. But that's me though. So you have to figure out like what exactly is the reason for the girl's presence in your life. Like if it's for children and family, marriage and all that stuff, fantastic. That's great. Like I love that for you. But if you don't know, and your answer can't be sex, okay? It can't. Because that's just too, I don't know. It's not sophisticated enough. Have a better reason. Have a more constructive reason. Because the truth of the matter is, if you have a vision of having a woman in your life for many years, our bodies are going to break down. Like our sexual parts are not going to function the way we always had them function. So there's got to be something else. And so you have to think longer. This is part of being a visionary, having vision. And then understanding like, okay, well, why do I want that vision and how do I make it happen? And so that's part of her, right? What is she here for? What is she going to do and why? All right, so that's number 3. You're leading her into what? Number 4 here is you think you're calm, but you're just numb. So there's a difference between being switched off and being cultivated. So being emotionally dull isn't dominance. That's not being dominant over your emotions. That means you're actually cut off. True calm has intensity behind it. So you learn to feel without losing command. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this phrase that goes, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. So that true calm with intensity behind it, that's being the warrior in a garden. Like you could kill, you could decimate, but you're choosing to plant flowers. And this is, he's got that, warrior's got that intensity, the capacity for that intensity with him at all times. Uh-oh. Excuse me. Okay, yes, pardon me. Dogs are going crazy. Wow. Okay, James. Yeah. You thought you would always eventually feel ready. Well, no. It doesn't happen that way. You have to make it happen. No, I'm a Leo. But I have a Libra rising. I think with women past all the pleasure, I want worship, dedication, and someone to accept parts of me and expand it in a different way. Well, you got to ask why. Why do you want worship? I don't want worship. Like it just, it happens. It's a result, but it is certainly not something that I want or that I'm seeking, right? The dedication, the loyalty, the worship, like that just happens, right? And I think it's dangerous when a man does want it to happen. I think it can get very, very dangerous. And makes me think in Game of Thrones, the character Joffrey. Remember King Joffrey? He was the teenage kid with the blonde hair. And that actor, he did so well playing that character that when he was out on the street, people hated him. Like they took their hatred of the character and cast it on him. It was wild. But yeah, he played a fantastic asshole. Fantastic. But that character was a fine example of a dominant tyrant who ruled through fear and greed. But not greed for riches, but emotional greed. He needed to force people into certain ways so that he could consume the emotional safety, that they approved of him, things of that nature, that they liked him, and that they obeyed him, that they were loyal to him. These things were what he was very much after. He really wanted the worship because he didn't have a very high level of self-respect. He didn't have a very high level of self-love. And therefore he made people give it to him. And so when we're not Joffrey, okay, because there are some guys who are like Joffrey, but it's not common. What's more common is the type of guy who he slyly gets that from the woman. So instead of forcing it out of her, he manipulates it out of her. And say like through guilt trips, being really, really nice so that she has no choice but to praise him a little bit for, whatever thing that he did. This is, yeah. And then like, he's like sitting there kind of like quietly trying to like hide that hungry dog who really, really wants that treat of her saying thank you. And yeah, so that's how the nice guy operates. It's through manipulation. And so she can be like guilted into behaving a certain way, treating him a certain way, speaking towards him a certain way. And it's more so through coercion that she would behave in such a manner. So the emotional calm, has more to do with like recognition, acknowledgement, and a slow process of just learning to control them and not just shut them off. You don't want to get into a position of shutting off your emotions. You want to just be in the position of being able to control them. So, you don't want to, like the dog, sure, you could just regularly beat the shit out of your dog and it'll obey, right? But you're going to kill its spirit. It's not going to have anything. It's going to be numb, right? You don't want to do that. You want to be able to leash the dog and train it to be still, train it to be obedient. And that's how you treat your emotions. But if you were to give the signal, it could turn into a vicious beast. It can run and jump and play, do tricks, whatever. Okay. But it's at your command. So that's the the leashed aspect, that's the calm behind it. And, the acknowledgement is really important because you want to learn how to feel without losing control. There's a difference. It's important to, there's this idea of, a wrong idea of stoicism, where guys want to try to shut themselves down. And that's not what this is about. That's not being dominant. That's being dumb. And frankly, you can't shut it down. Okay, unless you've got some sort of mental problem, like you have sociopathic tendencies or something like that. But if you push things down, it's going to squeeze out in other areas of your life. So you can't do that. You have to learn to feel and acknowledge, but only do something with it if you choose. And like everything, every skill, it just takes practice. We got to start somewhere. We really do. And it starts with the self-awareness. All right, so that's thinking you're calm, but you're just numb. Number 5, praise like a king, not like a simp. So if you can imagine, kings do praise. They praise the people of their court. They praise the people that they preside over, maybe as a group or certain individuals for certain things. So don't think that a king is void of praise, like it's beneath him or something. All right, because the difference between praising like a king and a simp is motivation. Validation should reinforce standards, not insecurities. So the simp is seeking to validate their insecurities. The king is seeking to validate his standards. So like all validation isn't bad. People say like, oh, you're seeking validation. Okay. Validation is just ensuring something. And like, that's it. That's all it is. So you can validate standards or you can validate your insecurities. And, when you praise everything, then it loses all meaning. And we don't want to do that. We want our praise to have meaning. We want our praise to have purpose. So I don't always say good girl. I don't say my good girl all the time, because it has to have meaning. I don't want to have my praise to ever be just a knee-jerk reaction. And so because I don't want to do this, so this is like an example of like, how leadership can work in a very subtle and small way. I don't want her to have any sort of knee-jerk reactions. So I remember when we were first interacting and we were messaging each other, a whole lot. And she was liking everything that I said. Like any message that I said, she would double tap and leave the little, standard heart. Okay. And I'm like, that looks like just a knee-jerk reaction. And it's either just habitual as a means of saying like, hey, I read this, or it's out of insecurity. And I don't want him to feel any kind of way because I didn't have any reaction to it. I just read it. And I don't want him to think that I was blowing it off or that I thought it was stupid or whatever. So I'm going to just cover my bases and like it anyways. And I was explaining to her that I don't want this. I don't care for it. It doesn't do anything for me. But so if something is to be liked, have it have meaning behind it. Praise with just praise out of habit means nothing. And so I don't want that for myself, and I don't want that for her, right? So anything that comes out, it must be genuine. And if it genuinely doesn't move you, I don't really care. There's no reason um, to leave a mark, like a a double tap or not. Like, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to me. But if you are going to do something, at least make it count. Have a reason behind it. And that's the same with you, with the praise that comes from you as a king, as her lord, as her daddy. It can't be just habitual knee-jerk reactions where everything she does that you end up liking. You're like, okay, good girl, good girl, good girl. Like, after a while, it just loses its intensity. All right, it loses its meaning, really. And we don't want that. And so I'm pretty mindful about how I praise and when I praise and why. And you should as well. It keeps you sharper, because if you make that a standard for yourself, what that does is it prevents you from falling asleep in your relationships. You should be paying attention all the time. And that's part of being a leader. Like, leaders don't really get to nap. You can't really sleep on the job. And I think, just you guys are just, a lot of you guys are caught up. You want the soft life. I remember that was going around for a while. Women were saying, I want the soft life. And like, guys made their own version. I can't remember what it was. Some stupid fucking like TikTok phrase. Oh, what was it? Drizzle. That's what it was. If my grandfather was around, he'd slap all of you guys who brought that to light. Just not even forehands. They would be all backhands. Backhands, man. I've never done that. I've done plenty of slapping in my day. I've even done punching, but I have never backhanded a girl. I feel like something like that would hurt a lot more than even a closed fist. Because there's things that have whipping motions. Just as a sidebar here, blunt things, say like a fist or like a paddle, or like a like one of those Louisville Slugger baseball bats. They're tiny. It's like a replica baseball bat, but it's like 1/3 the size. I love those little things. Like those, they thud. It doesn't really crack on you. You know what I mean? Things that have flexibility they can produce tremendous damage. Tremendous. Like, that's why, say, like a single tail bullwhip is so destructive, because it has that flexibility. And so when you combine the hard with the flexible, that's when things can get really, really dangerous. They get really interesting. Okay. So a slap is not stiff, right? Your hand is fairly flexible. It's loose. All right. Very relaxed. But the back of your hand is where all your knuckles are. So you can imagine, say, like a cat of five tails, right? You got like say a whip with 5 tails on it, but there's like metal studs on one end, or like one side of it. And that's the side that gets the impact. Like, that's gotta hurt so fucking bad. More so than, say, like a club, But that's what I imagine like a backhand would be. And I would be concerned about using that. I don't know. I'd have to try it and just gauge the amount of force. I imagine it would not be a lot of force. For those of you who are interested in impact play, you'd be surprised how little it takes to cause physical harm. It's so little. Especially like when you have a tool in your hand. You'd think that, so somebody who has no experience with BDSM, they might be thinking, wow, they must really, like whack hard on people, like full swings. No way. No way. I've got all kinds of tools, and I learned that you barely have to swing them to redden the skin, to cause pain, tears, whatever. And if you're to do a full swing with any of these implements, you could cause serious damage. Serious damage. So I don't know how we went from there, from praising, because depending on your dynamic, pain and impact can be a form of praise. It's because it can be a form of recognition. And if they're really into it, they can experience more love from that than the biggest, warmest hug. Just some girls are like that, and that's okay. As long as it's, consensual, loving wax, then it's all good. All right. So that's number 5, praise like a king. Number 6, stop seeking compliance and evoke devotion. So a real submissive doesn't follow rules out of fear or obligation. It's that she opens up and she blooms in the presence of a man who wakes her up. That's really what it is. They feel the process of submission, compliance, obedience, and surrender. All of these things are supposed to feel good, right? And you could even have the motivation behind it, be like, I want you to feel good, and I really want you to do this. It can't be done because you want it to. And it probably won't ever happen because you want it to. Kind of in the same sense of like, I don't want the worship. I don't want the devotion. I don't want the loyalty. Because, well, I mean, it's just not there. But I also understand that in my wanting, it ruins it. It changes the energy. It changes the dynamic of it. And so, but I don't like purposely make myself not want it, because now you're adding layers to the mechanism that don't need to be there. You just need to let go of wanting. And that's a lot easier than trying to create like tactics in your mind to force yourself to not want. Like, that's just weird. Okay. And I don't think it would work anyways. So it's just easier to let go of that desire. And so, because she wants that too. Like, she wants to open up and she wants to bloom in your presence because she feels safe to do so, because her heart is compelled to do so. And not because you are so rough and tough, right? Or so because you're so commanding. That will get you a docile woman, not a submissive woman. And I mentioned that I think last night or night before, or something like that, where last stream or 2 streams ago, the difference between a submissive woman and a docile woman. And we've seen those movies, right? Where there's like the housewife and she's very dutiful, but she's like a mouse. She's like not even there. And she might have like a little bruise under her eye where you could tell that he decked her or something like that. And she's like got her head down, she's in the kitchen, like doing stuff, maybe like serving food. And it's almost like she's trying her best not even to show up. Like, she doesn't even want to be noticed. That's docile. Her spirit has been squashed. It's been like just squeezed into nothing, right? And that's not really, like, she's only there as a fraction of herself. And you don't want a docile woman. You don't want to squeeze out their spirit. Okay, you want to release it so it becomes free. And And so really, the guys who are doing this, the guys who are controlling out of, are trying to control in this way, they'll get a docile woman, which might be satisfactory to them, but all that does is it satiates their fear, because they're afraid that she's going to leave him, and he's afraid that he's going to be alone. He's going to be feeling like he's not enough, so he makes her feel like she's not enough, or worse, he makes her feel like she's nothing. And this is a very real thing. This is not something that I'm just kind of making up as a fantasy. This occurs in real life. And so you can't have your fears, your insecurities, or anything like that as a guide for your choices, because it's only going to produce the most minimal of effects. And you might think that that's good enough, but know that you're just operating out of fear. You're scared. You're scared that the girl won't like you, or she'll leave you, or whatever. And all that just kind of whittles down to self-rejection of the man, right? The man rejecting himself. And this is what we don't want. Yeah, we don't want to squeeze her spirit out of control or through control. You want to invite her into your control, but out of just pure relaxation and allowing her to bloom within it. That's the whole idea, right? You want to evoke devotion as a response of her nervous system, as a response of her emotional system, and that she feels just like so safe that letting go isn't even a choice, it just happens. And that's where she's like, whoa, like, who's this guy? So the trick is that you can't seek to be that guy. You just have to become him. And if it just so happens to be the type of that guy for that girl, then great. Holy shit. The dog is snoring like crazy right now. Anyways, I don't know if you guys can hear him. He's so loud right now. Yeah. Oh, he's like, anyways. Okay, number 7. Now, number 7. Being decisive isn't enough. Be relentlessly clear. So, half decisions, weak framing, using terminology in your communication, it leads to confusion. Women respond to clarity like fire to oxygen. And you don't, you gotta really pay attention to your words. You really, really got to pay attention to your words. And almost as if you're talking to, almost if you're talking to a robot. Like, not that the woman is a robot, but in the sense that you have to make your commands and your communication very clear. So for example, there was a client of mine and he was talking with his wife, and something he was addressing something of her behavior, and the word vibe came up. I can't remember the exact phrase. It was something like, I noticed something weird about your vibe. Like, that phrase right there, I noticed something weird about your vibe, is super, super vague. And I said, and so my first question was, can you describe to me what vibe is? And can you describe to me what weird is? I need to know what those two things are. Weird how? And what was the vibe in detail? And so he went on to clarify what that is. And I said, okay, take all of that, distill it down, and that's what you should have told her. Don't speak in terminologies. Don't speak in isms. Speak in clear man English. I mean, if you speak English. But speak in clear man words so that there's no room for misinterpretation. That's what you need to minimize. So you have to be forthright with your communication. And this is important because it challenges you. Because if any of you have even a streak, a shred of the nice guy syndrome, one of the things that the nice guy syndrome does is that he tries to make things easier for everybody. I mean, on the surface, really, he's just trying to make it easier for himself. But the thing is that he's trying to make it super easy so that he's not misunderstood in any kind of way. And so that he can prevent the boat from rocking. That's really what his whole motivation is. He doesn't want the boat to rock. And so he's like, all right, how do I word this? And he ends up using too many words. He ends up, speaking too much and muddying the thing. Okay. And this is the problem. You use too many words, you end up just muddying the water. Okay. And it's really important that you speak clearly and concisely. And this will challenge him because he uses the word salad to, protect himself, right? He thinks that can kind of smooth things out. So whatever he has to say can be absorbed more easily. And when you're concise and you don't use too many words and you say just what needs to be said, then it puts pressure on that nice guy that's inside you. Because he's going to be afraid that being so direct is going to harm the other person, is going to scare off the girl, is going to make her feel bad, offend her or something along those lines. But just something bad is going to happen if he's too forthright. And, that's going to result in his rejection. And this is what needs to be challenged. So in your communication, yes, you're making sure, on one fork, you're making sure that you are being understood by her, by the woman who's listening to you. But at the other end, on the internal fork, is that you're challenging that nice guy who is afraid to speak up in a very clear and direct manner. And this is what you need. Like, you need to challenge that so that he can learn that, okay, rejection is, first of all, not some massively scary thing. And it probably isn't going to happen. So there are unjustified, irrational fears. So being decisive is enough. You have to be very clear with your decisions. Excuse me. All right, number 8. Porn dominance isn't real dominance. So excuse me just a sec. Boy, these dogs, man. Okay. How do I pay attention all the time? That's hard, man. It's not paying attention. It's more so a state of mindfulness, if that makes sense. You can practice mindfulness. There's all sorts of stuff that you can look up online about how to develop mindfulness. But it also comes in part with having vision, right? Being a creative individual of your life. This is like, how can you not pay attention and be someone who's driving their own life? If you're a passenger in your life, then it's easy to not pay attention. But if you're driving, you have to pay attention. But yeah, there's plenty of books. I'm sure there's lots of tutorials on YouTube about developing mindfulness. It's not like I'm perfect at it either. It's a process. It's something you grow over time. It almost sounds like being blunt. Sort of. Blunt implies like callousness that might, perhaps cause harm. No, it's not about that at all. You're not going to cause harm. It's not like blunt makes me think of carelessness. And no, I don't, it doesn't come across with carelessness. Actually, the clarity is the direct opposite of carelessness. It's because you have care that you want to be clear. Yeah, let's get back to what I was talking about here with the porn dominance isn't real dominance. So your fantasy isn't a substitute oh my gosh, this dog. Okay. Where was I? So yeah, we're talking about the porn not being real. So your fantasy isn't a substitute for emotional mastery, strategic thinking, or actual leadership. So like you can have like great fantasies and whatever things along those lines, but it's not going to make you him. All right. Like it's totally great to have, kinky ideas, kinky play, kinky fantasies, scenes and all that stuff. But, and it can feel very dommy, right? If I can use a word like that. It can feel that way, but it's not going to take the place of true emotional mastery, strategic thinking, or actual leadership. It's not going to do that. Okay. Like that's the whole separate stuff. And that's really the stuff that defines. Okay. So this is where people kind of get confused, and they'll say, oh, my guy does this and this in the bedroom. And they're like, oh, he's a dom. And I really don't think so. Like, I don't look at it that way. Right. Because does he have an emotional hair trigger? Does he think strategically? Is he organized? Does he have a good sense of leadership? Is he mindful? All right. Like, sure, yeah, there's domination in play, but I don't know if that actually makes one a dom. And those are two different things. Like there's a big difference between boxing and being a boxer. I think those are two very, very different things. So one is doing, and the other one is being. And that's what's really important, to understand that distinction. Okay. And it's okay to be in the state of doing. Totally fine to be a doer, and you're like, hey, this is just what I want. Like, I don't have the time, patience, or even desire to go that deep into it. And that's totally cool. Like, if you're just like, hey, I want to have play partners, I want to like occasionally go to like a sex party or dungeon, or just have like some play partners here or there throughout the month. That's all I want to do. Like, I don't want to like get deep into this. That's totally fine. Okay. But just understand that doesn't make you a dom. Okay. You do dominant things, and that's okay. Right. It's no judgment. I just need you to understand that there's a distinction between these things. All right. Just in the same way that if you take boxing classes 3 times a week, for like 2 hours, that doesn't necessarily make you a boxer. Okay. Because a boxer, it's like their way of life. They think about it and they breathe through boxing. Like boxing is like a filter through which all life passes through. His food, his rest, his time, the people he spends time with, all things, right, passes through the filter of I am a boxer. Right? If you take it seriously, that's really what must happen. So that becomes the framing of himself, and says, I am a boxer. This is what I am. And all things pass through that. And if it can't pass through, like a filter, that's what filters do. They filter out certain things. If it can't pass through, it doesn't get touched. And that's why I say, like, you've somebody who say, is like that. Maybe they don't go out drinking because they know what that will do to their training. Right? They don't do this, they don't do that. But they absolutely do these things because it's in line. It passes through the filter. The stuff that doesn't pass through, it's like, well, sorry, that doesn't happen. And so, to be anything, seriously, anyways, it becomes a filter. You start seeing everything through that lens. You start doing everything through that lens. Your choices go through that lens. And that's what I've done with my life. I think in these terms. And that's just how it is. That's the choice that I wanted, because I like the lifestyle. I like what it does for me, does for my mind, does for my spirit. Like I said, I've done many, many things in my life that, have the capacity to cause tremendous shifts internally. And I would say that this one is the most satisfying. And, I'm at like the precipice of thinking that it's a form of spiritual journey. But I'm not super inclined in that way of thinking, but it's really got me on the ropes, to bring in another boxing analogy. It's got me on the ropes. Okay. So don't be surprised if I, weeks or months from now, come in here and start talking about, all kinds of like spiritual things about spanking. You're like, Justin, you're losing it, bro. Yeah. So number 8, porn dominance isn't real dominance. Okay. Fantasy and play and all that shit, it's not a substitute for self-mastery. All right, number 9 on the list here is, if you can't withstand her storm, you don't deserve her calm. And I think I've heard girls say this online, like, if you can't accept me on my worst days, then you don't deserve my best days, something along those lines. And I guys would criticize women for saying that. I don't remember what the guys would say, but it makes a lot of sense, because you should be able to handle anything. Like, seriously, like, what's a girl gonna do? What's a girl gonna say that really can shake you? You know what I'm saying? Hey, what's up, Wicked Scorpion? Good to see you, man. So like, seriously, what are they going to do? What possibly could they do to throw you off your square, to really move you? What could they do? I'm like, I really can't think of anything except like if they were to do something with regard to my family, like my blood. Like, don't mess with my blood, don't mess with my money, and you're straight. like there's really nothing that will make me move in your direction, right? For whatever reason. So, but so many guys, like they, this one guy is a different client, and he is making some tremendous strides. And I gave him an assignment to, because he kind of like came through to a new plateau, and he's like, "Holy shit! Like, this is so cool. It's fun." With regard to like his the sexual activity that he's practicing with his girlfriend, and he came to this whole other realization about his own sexuality, and it's moving beyond just his nerves. And he's like, "Holy shit, this is cool." I'm like, "Yeah, like, that's what I've been trying to tell you. This is cool," right? So I'm having him write up his experience so far, like with regard to that, this new, kind of like passing through a certain threshold, and and he had a lot of these habits where he couldn't handle her storms. He would just kind of like set her adrift. He'd be like, "Oh, I can see that you're having a tough time, or it's the time of the month for you, and you're a little upset and a little, hair trigger with your emotional reactions. So I'm going to just put you in this little rowboat and gently push you out into the middle of the lake and just let you drift until you're okay again. And then I'll just reel you back in because I only like you when you're pleasant." And that's not to say that you need to like the woman all the time. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, with, with my sub, like if I like her, it's neither. Like, I don't like her or dislike her. She's not even in that realm at all. It's nothing to do with liking. But he was in that state. I only want to hang out with you when you're pleasant, well, a fair weather boyfriend. and really that doesn't show that you can withstand the responsibility, that you can withstand the weight of responsibility, that you can handle her emotions as if they're just like a little breeze. But by doing that, by being avoidant, you're showing that this little girl's just emotional reactions to things, they can offset you. It's like, what are you made out of? Aluminum foil? Like, come on. What's the deal, right? And you really got to pause in those situations. I'd say if you're communicating with a girl and she says something, whether it's about you or something else, or, it's irrelevant, and you feel the tension inside you, you got to take a second. And this is where practicing mindfulness is. Take a second to ask yourself, why is this bothering me? Why is someone else's emotional state bothering me? I have nothing to do with that. I mean, unless you were the one that, like, really offended them or really pissed them off, or, you accidentally drove over their cat or something. Sure, then that's, it warrants you having a clearer reason. It would be obvious, right? But it's not always the case. It's not often the case. Okay. So when they're in a state and you feel yourself having an emotional reaction of your own, you got to stop and pull back just for a moment and ask yourself, why am I having this reaction? That's somebody else, like a whole other being in a whole other reality of their own, having some sort of state And it's completely separate from me. Why am I feeling something? And typically it's not like a good feeling, right? You're feeling nervous. You're feeling anxious. Maybe you're feeling scared, maybe embarrassed or panicked, but none of it's going to be good. So it's like, why am I feeling these negative emotions? All because this other person is just in a particular state, momentarily, I might add. That'd be one thing if it's that state and it's permanent. Then that would justify being concerned, right? But that's more so being concerned for their well-being, because that's really odd. All right. But there's nothing that says you have to take on the responsibility of another person's emotions. And it's like, well, if they're constantly shifting, like every few minutes, then why are you taking them on so seriously? Like literally, if you notice, girls can shift in and out of emotions like very, very quickly, very quickly. And they can be opposite emotions. They can be feeling fine and, watch a sad movie and boom, they're fucking depressed. And then like when the movie's done, maybe it'll linger for a little bit and their friend will call and they're like, hey, what are you doing? Like, oh, no, I was just watching like this like sad movie, or I was just watching a movie. And because they don't want to admit that they were like purposely making themselves cry or whatever. And so they're just like, oh, I was just watching a movie. And their friend's like, hey, like, do you want to go to the mall? I heard like so-and-so is having a sale. And she's like, yeah, okay. And like pop, it's in this other emotion. Like she wouldn't be like, no, you know what? I put myself into this mood by watching this really sad film. And so I think I'm going to sit here for the next couple of hours and just kind of stew in this. Like, that's not how it works, So it's always shifting around. And so if that's the case, you just have to like let it be, have practice the stillness. So, women test, submissive women test, oftentimes it's subconsciously, right? It's often not conscious that they're doing this. And if you collapse under pressure, she'll protect herself from you by taking back the reins, right? She'll assume more control, mostly over herself. Sometimes about your behavior, but mostly from her emotional depth, her emotional letting go of her emotions. So, but this can also happen just as a life reaction. So, you could be with your girl and everything's like cool, right? But something in life happens that causes that causes her to emotionally protect herself. This will stiffen her up everywhere. Okay. It's not like, all right, I'm only going to be emotionally stiff only in that context. Okay. It's just that stimulus, whatever that thing like happened, like maybe it's at work or just throughout the day or something like that, a relative, whatever, that situation can cause an emotional stiffness. And she comes home or whatever, and she could be still in that state. Now, that doesn't mean like she's testing you. She's not pulling away from you. It's nothing that you've done, but just know that that strain can cause emotional stiffness in women, anxiety, adrenaline from an argument. Like this can cause emotional stiffness, and that's from a desire to protect oneself, like protect their emotional state. And then that is a form of control. Like when they're becoming stiff, that's control. Because, when we are feeling unsafe, we reach for control, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. Okay. And And whenever that happens, okay, whether it's due to something you did or said or life or whatever, you can't collapse. You really can't. You have to show that this is, you're just this solid being. Like, you're relaxed and solid. And you can't really fake it, because these are emotional things, and women are sensitive to emotions. They can feel you. They can feel you like, across a distance. They can feel you when you're right next to them. Even when you're posturing this or that. Like, they can pick up on the stuff. Okay. And so you can't fake it. You can't fake being calm under pressure. Like, you just have to keep practicing and controlling your emotions, relaxing, sighing. Okay. Because that relieves tension when you sigh. You should sigh often, like at least like a couple times a day. It just quickly just takes the edge off your nerves. Right. And so I'm thinking of one of my guys, and his girl like invited him to a family event, and he didn't really want to go. It was just too soon. It was too formal of an event to be meeting family and extended family. That's better reserved for like cookouts, picnics, something casual, right? Social, not something formal. And so he's like, I'm not comfortable meeting your whole family at such an event. It's like, I'm not going to go. And of course she was sad, and she got pouty and quiet, reserved. Okay. She protected herself, right? She became emotionally stiff. And the inner nice guy in that situation would start to panic a little. Oh no, I said the wrong thing. Oh my gosh, she's upset. She doesn't like me anymore. Oh no, she doesn't like me. What do I do? Quick, think fast. Do something. Fix it. But instead, and he's been like really working on this stuff. He did nothing. He just told her, right? Just clean, clear, and concise. All right. He didn't try to like explain himself, explain his reasoning. I mean, he just gave it pretty plain. It just said, this is, I don't feel comfortable meeting your whole family under such, a formal, such a formal context. And she said, okay, but she was clearly sad about it. And I think they were like closing up their dinner. And so, they got up, sat on the couch, and he's like, come here. Right, come to me. And he just held her, and she just collapsed. Like, she emotionally collapsed. She just opened up. And instead of rigidly holding on to those feelings and such, she just let him out, which is a great development for her, because she would usually hold on to things and not express and not just let go. And so as it's a good example of how, as he's getting more firm, okay, and I don't mean like firm, like bossy firm. I mean firm in terms of the density of his dominant masculine presence. So that is becoming more dense and more calm, and he's kind of like becoming more comfortable in this state, okay? Which is allowing her to relax into it, to open into it, and feel comfortable and safe enough to just let shit go, right? Even if it's something about him. She was sad that, he wasn't going. And so this turned into, right, I think I mentioned this before, how like if there's something bad that happens in the girl's life, or something that she hears or whatever, many times it can spiral and it turns into like just this one bad instance. And if they don't control it, it can unwind to my life sucks. Like eventually, like after like a half an hour or an hour or whatever, it eventually turns into this life sucks. My life sucks. And with the containment of him, she didn't do that. It flowed, but it didn't spiral out of control. And all he said nothing. He didn't give her empty platitudes. He didn't say, "Oh, it's going to be okay." Like, not really. He didn't say anything, and nothing at all except "Come here," because that's like the beckoning. That's the daddy energy, where you see the little girl who's upset, even if it's with one of your decisions, and you say, "Come here. It's going to be okay." Like, but you don't have to say it's going to be okay. Just in you saying, "Come here," and you're beckoning her into your calmness, that says without saying, it's going to be okay. It's not the end of the world, okay? Because she had all these thoughts, of these extra thoughts, like, oh my gosh, he doesn't like this, he doesn't like that, he doesn't want to meet my family, he doesn't want to do this, and and it just spun out, okay? But before she could really unravel, because he kind of saw it coming, he's like, "Come here," and pulled her in, and she was able to let go within, in his arms, both figuratively and literally. And then after that, she was different. She was more open. She was more released. She felt freer, right? And they had like some of their best sex that they've ever had. And it's because she was able to experience a new level of freedom and emotional safety with him. And like, this is, see, like all this shit's tied together. All of this stuff. So it's not like a linear thing. Like, okay, like I want her to just go crazy in the bedroom, right? Which, like, I don't know if she went crazy, but they had a very, very good night. Like I want her to do that. And it's not like, okay, well, here's the 4 steps you got to do to make that happen. No, as you can see, we're going through all these things. All of these things are woven together. There's no separation between what you are and what you do. The things you create and who's creating them. There's no separation between them. So, as number 9, if you can't withstand her storm, you don't deserve her calm. Number 10 here is she doesn't need to be submissive. She needs to feel safe to let go. So if you haven't built that safety through strength, clarity, and consistency, don't blame her for closing off. Okay. And it's okay if she does, right? Because that's an opportunity for you to see yourself, to see a bit of a mistake, and to understand that you can make changes, that you can adjust, that you can learn and apply something else, apply a different lesson from like any kind of new strategy. So, but really from like a position of to improve yourself, right? Maybe you weren't as clear as you thought. Maybe you weren't as consistent as you thought. Maybe you were not as strong as you thought. All right. And it's okay not to be as strong or as clear or as consistent. It's totally okay. What's not okay is to pretend that you are. That's not okay. Like, we're not here to blow smoke up our own asses. That's not what men do. We're just very real. That's what's necessary. Okay, is to be very real with ourselves so that we can be real with our woman. So that we can be clear with them. And as a result, like, bring out the best in them. Really watching that person grow. And this is kind of like the, one of the developments that happens that you don't really like prepare yourself for. And in talking about it, it's kind of weird, but excuse me. So in embodying like this, the daddy sort of energy, you have to be all right with separating yourself from her. And this flies in the face of all relationship media. It flies in the face of, like, movies, TV shows, literature, the stuff we grew up consuming, even our own families. All right. But there's this idea that you're at this same level, and it doesn't really work out. It doesn't work out that well. Okay. It's just this constant negotiation. And it's very difficult to stride in a direction that way. I don't know if any of you guys have worked corporate jobs. If you have, there's always meetings. Always meetings. And if you've ever been part of a team where everyone gets to weigh in if they want to, it takes so fucking long to not only come to decisions about what's discussed in that meeting, but it takes so fucking long for the meeting itself to conclude. They're the worst. It's much easier when it's not a committee, when that meeting is really going to be concluded, when maybe the leader hears things out a little bit from maybe a couple of people, like where they trust that person's judgment and saying, okay, let me hear what you got to say, right? And then make a decision based off that. Whether they like it or not, that's irrelevant, right? It's doing what that person thinks is best for the team, or best for the company, or whatever, or best for that division. So that's better. I've experienced both, and while all meetings suck, typically, the better ones are where it's not like everybody gets to weigh in. And this is kind of what gets programs to guys, and girls, right? That there's it's noble, it's honorable to have a democratic committee style relationship. And it really doesn't work out. What it usually turns into? It usually turns into a what do they call it? A matriarchy. Turns into a matriarchal dictatorship. And the girl resents him for it, and he doesn't like it either. The guy doesn't like it, the girl doesn't like it. But with this egalitarian sort of thing, this committee sort of thing, that's what it always turns into. Well, I can't say always. That's too strong of a word. But I would say that's what it often turns into. It's no good. It's no good. So it has to be led from the man's position. But that means assuming the responsibility, assuming the fault that comes from mistakes. You can't point the finger at anybody else. And I think maybe guys like the idea of this stuff. The theory sounds great, but it's a different scenario when you're in it, when you're leading from it. All right. And it helps, right? It helps to get yourself out of this mindset of we're on the same level. We're in this together. Instead of that, having a mindset of yes, we are in this, but I'm doing it. Like, like more so like you're with me. You're in this with me instead of we're in this together. And I think that's a better way to go about it, because that starts having you in this mindset that we're at these different levels. And it helps you assuming that daddy position, the position of daddy, and the position of, that helps develop the mindfulness, because you're assuming this position, the role, and the expectations you would think that go along with that role. Like nobody, nobody really tells you what you have to do as a father, but you kind of get the idea, right? You got to watch out for the little ones. You got to make sure they don't like stick their finger in a light socket, or swallow a Lego or whatever, you know what I mean? Sort of, pulling the cat's fur. I've got funny memories, but my babies interacting with my cats. It's funny shit. But anyways, but you don't want to, you don't want to do that. So like the father, he kind of has an idea of what needs to happen based on the role that he's assuming, the role that he's taking on. And that's really what you have to do. And so it gets you into this thinking of I, not we. Right? You don't look at as a father, you don't look at the child and go, we're in this together. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that you view your woman as a child, but just in that mindset, that relationship to each other. It's like, no, I'm in this with me and you're along for the ride. And I got to make sure that, you don't get into trouble. You don't harm yourself. And that's basically like, I don't know, fatherhood in a nutshell. But there's, an echo of that in your dominance. There's an echo of that in your masculine leadership, where you take it, point blank of like, this is what it is. This is on me. And if things go awry, well, I'm going to take it on the chin. That's me. But within that, and the more of the conviction that you have for this role, and allowing yourself to separate, okay, that you're on the throne and they're not. You're in the big chair, the big boy chair, and they're not. That the more convicted you are in this, the more you settle into the archetype and the characteristics of this archetype. Yes, you're shouldering more responsibilities, more awareness, more mindfulness, more creativity, more direction, more vision. But you also get really great rewards. You have a woman she's got your 6 on so many levels. Looking out for things that you're not really looking out for. Because she's seeing you from a different vantage point. Right? Because she's not on the same level. So she can see things that you can't see because she's viewing at a different angle. And that's fine. Okay. But that kind of sets up the precursors for service. That's what allows her to be in that position. Okay. If you're both fighting for the steering wheel, where is the service coming from? It won't happen. So, and with the responsibility that you're taking on, you get great stuff. She said, I feel like I'm trying to sell this to you. But, you know, it just is what it is. Right. And you can't actually think that it's great. It's just there. Okay. Um, it's not great, but it also isn't bad either. That's the position you got to be in really for a lot of stuff. And it, again, like that takes practice as well. Like you don't want to be pulled into like, this is awesome. This is not awesome. This is bad. This is good. Um, and just kind of just accept as they are. Okay. So like, yes, you know, the creative boy in me that likes to see cool shit happen, you know, can get excited when he sees that, you know, a sub has done this or said that or learns this or whatever. And there's like some sort of developments there. Yeah. Like I'll get a momentary lapse of joy from that. Okay. But it kind of like slips in and out, and that's it. Because I think it's just important to stay relaxed and neutral throughout these things. Okay. You know, and you're not gonna see me really getting embroiled on this channel. You know, I'm not gonna lose my shit, start yelling into the mic, starting getting animated and all this stuff. Like I just don't do that. It just doesn't happen. You know, because like I said, like this isn't something that I'm doing. It's something that I am. It's just part of my whole being, right? And not all Doms are this way. This is me, right? This is Dom Justin, right? Mr. J. And it just so happens that he's just, I don't know, relaxed and calm. But I feel that this is a good way to go about it. And I've met other Doms that have been at it for many, many more years than I have. And they're kind of the same way. So I feel like I'm on some sort of trajectory that, you know, others have come to understand as well, like before me. So, and this guy, what's his name? Arcane. I think he goes like that's his pseudonym is Arcane. And yeah, very smart guy. And you know, he's a relaxed dude. And he knows a fuck ton, like a lot about many things. And so you'll find that the more centered you are and the more balanced you can be around these things, it's what allows you to kind of you know, deal with like pretty much anything that happens, like say like in the woman's life or that she brings to you. It becomes very, very easy. Because I mean, like what is the wind to a mountain? Nothing really. Like maybe like a couple pebbles might move here and there. But really, like it really just doesn't do much of anything, right? So, and then from that, like sure, like you don't have these bigger you know, these bigger responses to things. Like I remember I was having this consultation with this guy. He was thinking about becoming a student. And I'm glad he didn't, because he had just a lot. He just had too much stuff inside him to unravel. So he had just too much stuff inside him to unravel, and he asked me. I was sort of like briefly describing this stuff, and he goes, "So, am I like gonna just stop enjoying sex? Am I gonna stop enjoying women?" And I'm like, "No, man. See, like that's the attachment talking, right? That's the drug addict talking. That's the emotional drug addict saying like, shit, am I still gonna be able to get high?" Or I'm just gonna be cut off from all of my favorite drugs that make me feel valuable. Like, no, you're no longer gonna feel valuable from them for sure, but it's gonna be substituted with something much more real. You're gonna feel valuable by becoming valuable and not needing something to make you feel that way. You just will be. There's a big difference, but he was too far gone, and having spent too many years and getting sunk in way too deep into that emotional drug lifestyle, I guess, if I want to call it that. But he had just had too much in one direction, and he was sunk into, that plateau. And so anything contrary to that would feel like a threat to his identity. Because that's the thing. You do anything for long enough that has an emotional effect, it's likely to become your identity, or a very strong or significant part of your identity. And so, he was basically like this drug addict nice guy. And because he had spent so much time, he had actually gotten pretty good with girls, such that he could supply himself with enough of the drugs that he felt like there was no problem. And the reason why we were talking is because he couldn't keep any of them around. He was not able to inspire devotion. He was not able to inspire devotion. They were not like obsessed with him. They were not emotionally very connected to him. And so he could get them, but it was like a revolving door. And he wanted to know the secrets of, making a woman obsessed with you. So she sticks around. And I'm like, well, that's a fine enough motivation, but just understand, once you get there, you're no longer going to care whether she's obsessed or not. You're not going to care whether she's there or not. It's, there's going to be appreciation, but your level of caring and your level of attachment is going to be drastically different. And that's just what he couldn't handle. Because there was so much attachment to sex and what it did to him and what it did for him, that to change it into something that he didn't know what that change would be, because that's like a whole new paradigm for him. So he couldn't really compare it. And that is what made it feel like a threat. It was a threat to his identity, his sexual identity. I'm like, okay. And the way of man is not for everyone. That's just nature. That's just nature. It is what it is. Yes. What's up, All-Star SC? So to you for putting in your picture. I think is like you men should have your photo in your profile. Like, why hide it? I mean, unless you've got like some kind of like work thing that's involved, where it wouldn't be wise for you to show your physical identity for work purposes, then fine. But if it's not that, then excuse me, I would say fuck it. Put your face there. Don't hide behind symbols. Like, thinking that's cool. It's not cool. It's cool being transparent. Like I feel like those like after school specials. You know what's cool? Not doing drugs. Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm gonna pull this to a close. I'm getting tired. So, and I don't want to be yawning in your face all evening. But I really appreciate you guys coming through and listening to those 10 things. If you have any questions, drop me a line. Everything can be found on the website, thedominance.academy.com. You can actually ask questions through the website. You don't even need to jump on your email. So you can just go there, ask me questions, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. There's also new products available. They're under tutorials. And right now, I think there's 3 or 4 pieces in there. And I'm going to be adding more this week coming up. And going to keep at it and just keep adding to that library. All very cool stuff. Stuff that's not readily available on the internet for purchase and understanding and how to do. All right. And a lot of it has to do with influence. Influencing your woman's mind, influencing her heart, her perspective, her relationship to sex, her relationship to you, and turning it into like a holistic event, where there's really no separation between the man, the relationship, the sex, the energy, the mind. It all just kind of takes on, how do I say this? Like the same branding. That's a good way to put it. It's like the branding all just kind of falls under one, and that's where it becomes really powerful. So check out that stuff. If you have any questions, drop me a line. And thank you guys for coming through. And as always, thank you for watching on the replays. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.